just give a few moments to allow everyone to join. Just a few moments, 5 minutes. That we can start. So, good morning, everyone. A very warm welcome from Portugal to this webinar, Disinformation and Education, European Approaches to a Global Challenge. My name is Janaína Cardoso, and I work in Aproximar, and I am delighted to be one of your hosts for this webinar. Please note that this webinar will be recorded. If you prefer, you are welcome to turn off your cameras, although it's always nicer to speak to friendly faces. First of all, we would like to thank Professor Vitor Tomé and Professor Miguel Ferreira da Silva for accepting our invitation. Thank you. Obrigada in Portuguese. This webinar is a part of a cycle of webinars organized within the project MILES, Meal and Pre-Booking Approaches for Critical Thinking in Education Sector. That is an European initiative co-founded by the Erasmus program. Through this webinar cycle, we aim to address key educational challenges by promoting critical awareness and resilience in the face of disinformation. We will have webinars here in Portugal and in the other countries that are partners or in MILES, okay? Not only in Portugal. So thank you for joining us. We know that your time is valuable, and it's a privilege to welcome participants from various countries and professionals' backgrounds, all brought together by a shared interest in this crucial topic. We live in a time when disinformation spreads quickly and widely, threatening democratic values. Education plays a vital role in addressing this challenge through the promotion of critical thinking and media literacy. Our speakers, with both academic and practical experience, will share strategies, case studies, and reflections from their professional experience. This webinar will last for 19 minutes, more or less, and will include time for questions and discussions at the end. We are only encourage you to participate. Feel free to use the chats or do your questions in the end. Please, you're very welcome to do all of your questions. Without further ado, I will now hand over to Margarida Oliveira, that work in OLAE. We will begin to presenting the MILES initiative and today's agenda. Margarida, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. I have just a quick presentation that I'm going to share with you all. Just a quick second. Okay. So, as I was saying, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here on a Monday morning for what will be our first of 5 cycle webinar. Today we will debate about disinformation and education. And I'd like to thank you all for coming and thank you also to our 2 keynote speakers, Professor Vitor Tomé and Professor Miguel Ferreira. I'm sure it will be a very insightful morning. And our agenda, okay. Our agenda, so we will start with Professor Vitor Tomé with tackling disinformation society approach. And then we will have room for Professor Miguel Ferreira da Silva with public policies for digital literacy, national and European responses to disinformation. And then we will have some room for questions and debate. And hopefully around midday, we will have a wrap up. So just A little about the purpose of this webinar cycle. Through conversations with experts, this webinar cycle aims to foster critical thinking and digital resilience in the face of growing online manipulation and disinformation with important and interesting topics. Just a little introduction also about Miles project. If you are interested, we published here the website. You can have the link. But Miles is funded by Erasmus Plus program and uses medium and information literate and pre-bunking approaches with evidence-based policy in education. Our main mission is to promote public awareness about disinformation and cognitive biases while empowering teachers and promoting critical thinking skills and safe online navigation to students. And Miles already has some impactful results. Our partners have previously conducted, through the mapping of existing resources and policies, an extensive data to support the development of training materials for what was the training of trainers at TOT, ensuring also it is deeply grounded in real needs and practical context through European educational systems. We are all through Europe, so our coordinator is from Italy, the Centro Danilo Dolci, but we are also from, of course, Portugal, Belgium, Germany, Austria, Netherlands, Greece, Cyprus, Poland, and Romania. So very international here. To just leave it with this, the importance of media literacy. MIL is an indispensable skill set for navigating what is the complexity of the 21st century media landscape. And by fostering critical thinking, promoting informed decision making, and empowering individuals with the tools needed to access media content, MIL plays a crucial role in building a more informed, engaged, and democratic society. And I wanted to finish with actually a quote by UNESCO Director General Audrey Azoulay, that the access to reliable and fact-based information is a fundamental pillar of democracy and is crucial for our ability to address all significant issues we face, be it change, migration, conflicts, or poverty. As such, it must be treated as a just like the water we drink and the air we breathe. And this is our partner logos. And I finish here and with the presentation
I
of
will,
the webinar
okay.
and give the room for the speakers to finally start.
Yeah, I will. Thank you very much. I'll introduce first the speakers. That it's my honor to introduce these amazing speakers. I will start with Professor Vitor Tomé, will be the first speaker to speak. Vitor Tomé is an expert, and Professor Vitor, if I say something wrong, please correct me, okay? So Professor Vitor Tomé is an expert in education for digital citizenship at the Council of Europe, a member of the European Commission expert group on tackling disinformation through education and training. A guest researcher at CIES-ISCTE, Instituto Universitário de Lisboa, focusing on media literacy and journalism, a lecturer in communication science and at Universidade Autónoma de Lisboa, a teacher trainer for the Ministry of the Education, a trainer of trainers, and a professional journalist. Thank you, Professor Vitor Tomé. If you, I will introduce Professor Miguel Ferreira da Silva later. Please, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Janine. Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I've prepared a PowerPoint. If you allow me, let me just share it with you. Just a moment. Yes, this is my. I prepare a short PowerPoint that I can then share with you, and all the links that I will refer are also available through this PowerPoint or accessible to the PowerPoint. Okay. When you invited me, my idea was okay. The global challenge. It's evident, but the European approaches are not so evident because we have a lot of different activities and approaches to tackle disinformation. My idea was, okay, maybe we can at least organize this short talk in three moments. First, speak a little bit about the current context regarding disinformation and education. Some initiatives from European institutions, and also refer some projects, mainly projects that I'm involved in, and that are projects that deal directly or more indirectly with disinformation. Okay, so to start the context, when it was okay, maybe you have some data and risks, and I decide to quote some ideas from the Reuters Institute Digital News Report in 2025, and some ideas because there is a lot of important information and very interesting information. But I decided to rely on four main ideas. First, regarding news consumption, it's evident the dependence on social media nowadays. Not only social media in general, but mainly video platforms, because the video consumption in news and not only in news is increasing and continues to increasing. It's important to explain that we have now, regarding news, online news, we have six main players in terms of social networks. The two major players are Facebook and YouTube, but we have all the others like TikTok, like Instagram, and X, for instance, and Mastodon. So the third idea is 58% of the sample, and we have a sample from 48 countries, at least 1,000 people in each country, so it's a lot. It's a representative sample. 58% remain concerned about their ability to tell what is true from what is false, which is 6 in 10, it's a lot. And then in terms of misleading information, half of the sample considers that influencers, personalities are the biggest threat, along with national politicians. So this raises a huge problem regarding trust in institutions, trust in politics, trust in information, and also in mainstream journalism. Okay. Another idea from the current context. I read this news story a few days ago on New York Times, and Ukraine is warning teenagers to really be careful about what they found inside their mobile phones, okay, because the enemy is inside their phones. I like to stress this idea that you have on our left, that according to the Ukrainian authorities, the Russian state is targeting teenagers on social media apps, and the idea is to pay them to make them implement or develop some activities that are at least not good for their country, Ukraine. Okay, and this is a huge problem nowadays, especially if you have in mind this blog from OECD that discusses who is too young to scroll, and is about all the countries are nowadays dealing with these problems of which age should be established as the starting limit to use social media, and we know that is a problem everywhere. I stress this main idea. In 2023, nearly 40% of West children aged 11 to 12 use social media, and 63% of children aged 8 to 11, sorry, in the United Kingdom. So it's a lot, especially if we know that in Europe, and according to recent statistics from the European Commission, on a typical day, 96% of the 15-year-old use social media at least 3 hours per day. So we have a complex context regarding disinformation, because when we ask children, young people, adults, elderly people, they systematically say that they are dealing with disinformation on a regular basis online. Okay. And especially because they don't have the knowledge and in some cases the tools to deal with this disinformation. In terms of initiatives that and approaches, I would like to refer some initiatives from the European Commission, the Council of Europe, and the European Parliament. For instance, from the European Commission, the problem was already a huge problem in 2018, and the high-level group that was organized by the European Commission produced a report, and in this report, some ideas are key, and some ideas, I would say, to take action. And some approaches were, for instance, guarantee the transparency of online news, promote media and information literacy to counter disinformation, which is the most important for us today, and then implement fact-checking, help support journalists developing fact-checking, safeguard the diversity of the European news media ecosystem, and promote continued research. This was, I would say, an important starting point, and one of the consequences was the creation of the European Digital Media Observatory. Currently, the European Digital Media Observatory has 14 hubs that cover all Europe, all countries, plus Norway, all countries of the European Union, of course, plus Norway. And in general, they are different, of course. Not all have the same number of members, but in general, they have as main targets detecting and analyzing disinformation, the campaigns, supporting mainstream media and public authorities, then organizing media literacy activities. And I think this is really important because we have different partners organizing media literacy activities, not only for teachers, not only for elderly people, for young people or young adults, but for everyone. And this is really important. And finally, providing support to national authorities. These hubs, one of these hubs covers, for instance, Portugal and Spain, and I'll explain later. I'm working for this EDMO hub since its inception in 2021. In terms of the European Commission, and as part of the Digital Education Action Plan, it was published these guidelines for teachers and educators on tackling disinformation and promoting digital literacy through education and training. The guidelines were produced by a group of 25 people between October 2021 and October 2022. And currently, these guidelines are being updated with 4 new chapters, and all content are being revised and is being revised, and the guidelines will be published in new version by the end of this year, maybe November, December, I'm not sure. But at least it's the initial idea from the European Commission. These guidelines are interesting because teachers can find not only simple lesson plans, not very complicated lesson plans, but also tips, concepts, cautionary notes, some glossary, not developed not in academic terms, but in a very simple words that can use with their students. The first version of the guidelines in 2022 has also a scientific report that is a kind of a signed document, a side document, and is important. Another interesting initiative is the EDMO guidelines. The EDMO guidelines were organized by a group of 11 members. Some of them are part of the EDMO hubs Some of them are experts from other institutions or projects. These guidelines aim to support all institutions, all researchers, all NGOs and other that want to implement media literacy activities. And that is, what should I take in account before, during, and after my initiative? Because we have a huge problem in terms of media literacy. We have several, of course, but this one is huge. It's measuring impact. And measuring impact assessment, the impact assessment is really, really important. And these guidelines were produced in order to support those that are developing or are planning to implement media literacy activities, not only in the European context, of course, but mainly in the European context. In terms of the European area, I would like to stress also the work of the Council of Europe. The Council of Europe, as the European Commission, has also a model of empowering citizens. We have DigiComp from the European Commission 2.2. We will have DigiComp 3.0 by the end of this year. And the Council of Europe has the model that is called Digital Citizenship Education. But they invited Claire Wardle and Dossier Interaction to produce this report in 2017. It's a report that distinguishes disinformation from misinformation from malinformation. This is an important activity because not everything is disinformation, okay? And it's important to explain what is information disorder. This report is really easy to read and is available in different languages, in Portuguese, for instance. The Council of Europe is also producing a guide, and this guide aims to support member states and other countries to design national media and information literacy strategies and practical indicators. The leading expert that is developing this document is Nicoletta Fortiade, on the left in the photo. And this was a meeting that was organized in Paris in May. This meeting aimed to improve the document and to discuss some aspects of the document. Apart from this document, the Council of Europe is also developing another work in progress also by the Councils of Europe Steering Committee on Media and Information Society. And this is a document that is aimed to counter disinformation and promote information integrity. The document is now a work in progress, but a workshop will take place in Paris on the 4th of July to do a similar process to improve the document and to discuss some aspects of this document that, in my humble opinion, will be a very useful document for educators and learners. Also, the European Parliament produced a page focused on disinformation, and this page has 6 videos. We don't have time to watch these videos, but these videos are really important videos that are last for 3 minutes maximum. There are videos on playing on emotions, polarizations, flooding the information space, taking advantage of the confirmation bias, manipulating context and attacking and silencing critical voices. All these videos are important, and you can find it in this page. Okay, on this page, it's important to have a look at least. Finally, I would like to refer 3 projects. One of them is the EDMO that I have already referred to you before, the Iberian Digital Media Observatory. For instance, this consortium joins 26 different partners, 12 are universities, some are fact-checkers, some other have different activities, for instance, the Barcelona Supercomputing Center. And iVerify has different branches of activity, but one activity is media and information literacy. Since 2022, we trained around 1,000 journalists, not only in Portugal and Spain, but also in all the Portuguese-speaking countries and Spanish-speaking countries. We also trained teachers. We developed activities with students, with elderly people, with other different target groups. Okay, and the results were interesting. But we should have in mind that, for instance, in Portugal, so far also integrated in iVerify, but not only were able to train 500 teachers. We have 150,000. So there's a lot to do here, okay? In terms of decoding algorithms and my humble opinion, it's nowadays almost impossible to speak about this information without speaking about artificial intelligence, namely generative artificial intelligence. And this project is a project funded by Creative Europe that joins partners from France, Croatia, Ireland, and Portugal. And we produced a video game on algorithms and a set of quizzes. Also, some eye openers and icebreakers that teachers and other educators can use in their practices. We organize a workshop and produce accompanying documents for the quizzes and for the video game. All these resources are available online already in Portuguese and English from today on, but also they will be also available in French and in Croatia very soon. Let me just tell you that today, precisely today at 11, we will open an exhibit at the News Museum in Sintra in Portugal, where all these resources are available. The idea is to make this toolkit available for all schools, for all institutions that may want to implement a similar exhibit. Okay, we have also posters that are editable and other. Finally, a third project that we are developing since 2024 is a project that is focused on public libraries. The partners are Portuguese, Spanish, and Irish. So we produced an hybrid course, okay, an hybrid course for public librarians that aims to support them developing, implementing, and assessing media literacy community projects, okay, starting from the public library. The training is about to finish in Portugal. It's already concluded in Spain, and the results were quite interesting. And in Portugal, they are also being interesting. So this project will have final results in December 2025, January 2026. The final results of All Watch project will be available very soon, also maybe in September. Okay. And finally, I would like to share with you 3 notes. That is, media literacy is crucial in the fight against disinformation, of course, but it's only one of the 3 pillars. The other pillar, it's, of course, the technological area. And then one that is really, really important at the European level, the legislation, not only at the European, but at the national level. But I decided to focus only on media literacy. Then Europe has a lot of initiatives in education. Let me just share with you that since 2021, through Erasmus, the European Commission funded 748 projects with 57 million euros, and these projects are focused on media literacy and tackling disinformation. Okay, so we have a lot of initiatives, and that's why I think that it is urgent to create a system that guarantees the effective sustainability of research projects, because these projects are, in general, very good, but when they finish, even the resources, usually they start being used by different institutions, not only schools. And I think it's important to find a way to avoid this. And that was my my talk. Thank you very much, and I'm of course very happy to answer to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Vitor Tomé. It's always amazing to listen to you. You are all welcome to do questions in the chat. I will maybe uh, give the space to all the questions in the end after listening to Professor Miguel Ferreira da Silva, if all agree. I will introduce Professor Miguel Ferreira da Silva. Professor, I ask you the same. If I say something wrong about your career, please correct me. So, Professor Miguel Ferreira da Silva graduated in law from the Faculty of Law at the University of Lisbon and specialized in security and defense during his PhD at the University of Nottingham. He served as a military representative of the Ministry of the National Defense in Washington. He currently works as a lawyer, researcher, writer, and university professor. He was the first president of the Liberal Initiative in Portugal and is currently a member of the party's National Council. In the field of promoting digital literacy and countering disinformation, he has worked on legislation, I'm sorry for the English, and in participation in European forums. That is correct? Good. So thank you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Janine. Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all hearing well. We got this. We have this cut phrase from COVID. I hope everyone is listening. I'm no longer at the National Council of my party, but it's very recent, so you wouldn't know. And I do have some experience in media regulation because I was in the beginning of the Media Regulating Authority in Portugal, ERC, in 2006 when it was established by law the previous year in 2005, and then in 2006 it was set up, and I've worked there ever since. Even though it is also true, meanwhile, I have a few extras representing our armed forces in Washington, but also doing a couple of other things in security. Anyways, since good morning, everyone, again. Since Professor Vitor Tomé was so thorough, and thank you so much. You spared me almost everything about media literacy. I will take this chance and go a little bit further than I was expecting. So it will be kind of in the spot, but actually it is an opportunity. And my idea is, since Professor again was so thorough, to speak about the poles, the extremes that are just before and after what Professor Vitor Tomé shared with us, and therefore trying to make this a little bit more interactive. As you probably know, most of you, if not all, there is a big problem with concepts in this area. And I'll give you just one tiny taste of it. For those thinking about security, the basic difference between fake news and disinformation is a question of intention and goal. When you have a fake news, usually the person that does it willingly, or willingly in the sense that the person creates, the actor creates the fake news, or knows it's a fake news and still disseminates, the intention is mostly attention. So it's a little bit like some media that wants audiences. That is to say, something that catches our eyes, catches our attention. And the main goal is usually that. Again, sometimes knowing that they are doing it, and sometimes just knowing it's fake, but still disseminating it. The idea behind this is to be important, in the sense that I know all, my neighbor is with someone he or she shouldn't, kind of gossip taken to the extreme. And yes, I'm characterizing, but you got the drill. Disinformation, it's the opposite of this. From a security perspective, is the intention to meddle with a process of decision. It doesn't really matter if the decision maker is you or me in a supermarket trying to buy some shampoo and being victim of a disinformation that a certain brand of shampoos, it's bad for your hair, or if it's the government with a campaign on disinformation on how a foreign actor is acting or thinking or considering their military options. So again, going to the very basic, concepts are very, very important, and they are not, and this is almost unique in this area, they are not yet sufficiently consolidated. That is to say, some academics think that disinformation is slightly more this or slightly more that. And the same for fake news, misinformation, malinformation, and so on and so forth. Why am I saying this? This is a very, very big challenge for policymakers. Because if you are trying to design a campaign on this area, it's very hard if you don't agree with concepts, or even if you do agree with concepts, but it's not exactly the same between the Portuguese and the Spanish and the French and so on and so forth. So it's been a very big challenge from the policymaker point of view to have common ground. That common ground, for better or for worse, has been happening on its own, on reality, and not so much in academia or in government. Oh, by the way, Janine, there's one tiny detail that I missed sending to you. I'm so sorry. I am currently, for the past year, more or less, not only working with media regulating authority in Portugal, but with the Portuguese government, trying to develop a media code. It will be, hopefully, the first media code as such in Europe. There are some approaches that are usually about broadcasting. Our idea is to also have radio, press, and digital. So it's quite a challenge. But this is important in what I'm about to say, which is the opposite pole. Again, Professor Vitor Tomé was so excellent in his presentation that I have to take the opportunity to explain this first pole and now the second. Professor Vitor Tomé told us that besides media literacy, and here in Portugal there are some policies that are starting now, and I'll speak about that in a few minutes. But besides media literacy, we also have to look on technology and legislation. And this is the point that I want to make in the end. Now, going slightly back, in Portugal, we are in October, the government announced a new plan of action for the media in general, not just broadcasting, not just digital, but traditional press as well. And among the 30 measures that plan has, some of it will be to develop almost immediately some media literacy actions in disfavored schools. Mind you that I'm not talking about what Professor Vitor Tomé just spoke with us, which is an acquis, an experience, a cooperation effort between many actors that has been going on for quite some time throughout Europe. I'm talking about government itself, and not just the Media Regulating Authority, which in Portugal has for quite some years now participated in an informal group for media literacy, has developed an initiative which is 7 days with the media in schools. I'm not talking about any of those. I'm talking about formal government officials going on and adopting media literacy initiatives in disfavored schools. That's the first point. The second one is eventually, with the experience from all of these groups, both in Portugal and throughout Europe, to develop at least one content on media literacy to introduce in the curricula of middle school and high school. And this is quite new because it's a government admitting that they, us in this case, can do this without interfering with the concept of truth or the press. So that's the first thing. A second thing I'd like to highlight is that amongst these measures, there's something quite new that I see with very favorable eyes, which is also, again, already being implemented until the end of this year. Every youngster in Portugal between the ages of 15 and 18, since 2 months ago, no, less than that, a month and a half, more or less, will be entitled to have a digital subscription of one traditional media for 2 years, free of charge. Government itself pays for this. So it's not any media. It's traditional newspapers usually that apply to be part of this program. In our case, I see by the names that a big chunk of you are Portuguese, but even for those who are not, you will probably recognize names like Expresso, which is our main weekly newspaper, or Observador, which is our main digital newspaper, but many others, Público and so on and so forth, Vida Económica, several newspapers, either general information newspapers or economic newspapers, are in this initiative, and the government pays a fixed amount for digital subscriptions, free of charge again for the youngsters and anyone. And this is important because some of them may even have dropped out of school, but still are entitled. This was a big discussion if it should be connected with schools or not necessarily, but only with age. And in my opinion, well, it was decided that it didn't necessarily have to do with being a student, because you could be a very young professional and still needed to have access to traditional media. Why is this particular, between the 30 measures, why is this so important? For something mixing now the basics and the very extreme difficult pole of legislation, to which I will address, there is one tiny detail that's been bugging me, let me put it this way, which is, if you go back to what I said earlier on the difference between disinformation and fake news, you see that one of them has an intention to disrupt the decision-making process, whilst the other only wants to capture your attention, for good or bad. It doesn't matter to the point. To have clicks, to have likes, you name it. Traditionally, you think that on the one hand, you have to do media literacy. Some people already are tired, let's put it this way, tired of media literacy initiatives, I mean, as a target. Others started calling for more fact-check, how shall I put it, instruments, okay? Not necessarily fact-checkers, but instruments, apps, and so on, so as to be able to fact-check, which is a very hard thing to do, because you'd have to have permission to access proper news so as to fact-check, and to do that, you'd have author rights, you name it, commercial rights, you name it. So, I'm sorry for being a little bit confusing, but this will all make sense in a few minutes. So, the idea is, one of the big differences is, as Professor Vitor Tomé just told us a while ago, the word and the concept of trust. Trust is it's the key, I should say, for you to consider something to be truthful or not. And when I say you, I'm not addressing the point of the specific news being truthful or not. I'm talking about our perception of the news that reaches us. Putting it in a very, very extreme example. please don't take it any other way than as an example. If I go to a doctor and I'm specialized in any field, I will not even say any field, and he or she tells me that they have a very specific and very serious disease, and my wife's cousin, who's a nurse of another specialty, is a frequent visitor at home, and we are very good friends. When I get out of the doctor, I will immediately call that nurse and ask him, yes, I said him, not her, and ask him if what the doctor told me was true or not, or if I should do this treatment or that. Now, if you stop a little bit, this is only human to do, and I'll say why in seconds. But if you stop to think, how can I, who was just told by an expert in that field that I have this particular condition and I need this particular treatment, will trust more someone with less qualifications, okay, and from another field to reinforce or not a decision I have to make? How is this possible? And the answer is, as Professor Vitor Tomé just told us, trust. Truth and trust are very connected, emotionally connected in every human being. And this happens because of accreditation. So, in some way, what us policymakers are looking for are credentials, ways to make people, anyone, me included, be able to trust a source of information, a source of news. That was usually done by journalists with literal sources. But now that we have access directly to the news, directly to the facts, better said, we imagine news upon facts that we see and hear. So the key from a policy making point of view, I'm sorry, maybe I'm out of time because I usually get lost on this. No, I still have time. Is, as I said, a way to show people if they can mostly, you can never trust 100% anyone, but mostly trust or not. And that usually happens by, again, some sort of credential that gives us accreditation on that source of news. Now I'm going to the really, really, really hard part on legislation. We all live in the European context, in liberal democracies. Liberal not in the sense of a political party, even though, as it was just told, I am a liberal, but in a broader context of fundamental rights and liberties enshrined in the constitutions of each country. So, in this context, it is forbidden to have censorship. And for the last, let's say, 40 or 50 years, in some countries even a little bit more, in some countries quite less, censorship has been understood as any sort of pressure that would make a journalist, an editor, a director of information within the context of the press, to feel pressured to broadcast or not to broadcast a specific news or event. But technically, again, concepts, technically, that is not what censorship is. Censorship is the obligation of prejudge if something should be reported or not. And I'll give you an extreme example that any of us will immediately understand. This is not an academic case. This example actually happened. I will not say the names, but it really happened. I was involved in the Media Regulating Authority in dealing with this. In a small village in Portugal, with only two medical doctors, one of them was accused in the local newspaper of fraud. As you probably know, here our medicine is comparticipated, is partially paid by the state, and the public system that supports the payment of medicines in the pharmacies was investigating that particular medical doctor for a possible fraud. Now, this part was true, but the local newspaper printed the first page, the name of that medical doctor, saying Dr. blah, blah, blah is being investigated because of fraud. And you can imagine in a small village how the population reacted to this, particularly those who were patients of that doctor. What the newspaper did not say was that that doctor had quite a number of elderly patients from the even smaller villages, aldeias, nearby the village, that would go to the pharmacy and ask for medicines, and then once a month he would stop giving consultations and write down all the prescriptions. That is to say, instead of writing the prescriptions one by one, as those patients usually would need that medicine for years, he would take one day out of the month off and write everything. In the central system in Lisbon, as you can imagine, one doctor in a small village having a lot of prescriptions in the same day for the same pharmacy, all the red flags and the bells rang. It's normal. There was an investigation. But the problem is, between truth, objective truth, and what is called journalist truth, there is a difference. Sometimes, when you know there is a difference, you as a journalist, you have the responsibility of investigation further and not less. This was not a problem until social media came. But now, when most content creators do even less than this distinction, journalists, and this is the key point, journalists are pressed to be as fast as the media content creators. Now, going back to the concept, I'm almost finishing, promise you. Going back to the concept of censorship. In this particular case of the medical doctor, censorship would be the journalist would write down the piece, and before having the freedom of the press of printing it, would present the text to someone who would say, yes, it's good to go, or no, you cannot print it. This would be censorship. Right, wrong, on the case itself, let's not discuss this. It would be wrong as a concept, because it would be a limitation of the freedom of the press. However, and again, I hope that most of you at least agree with me, this freedom of the press, in this particular case, should be accompanied with the equivalent responsibility. That is to say, at the very least, make another first page saying, after all, that medical doctor was a good guy for his patients and was not putting money in his pocket. It didn't happen. And that medical doctor had to resort to the Media Regulating Authority to exercise the right of reply. Mind you that the right of reply, the right to defend your own name in the newspaper, never has the same impact as a proper news. even if there is a proper news, it doesn't have the same impact. It cannot undo the impact in that village that the first news have. Why did I went so far? Because again, in a liberal democracy, liberal again in the constitutional sense of the word and not ideological. In a liberal democracy, we should reject with a lot of strength, reject censorship, but we should, this will be very hard to say, but I have to say this word, educate in some way that the exercise of freedom carries also responsibility. This responsibility in the exercise of freedom is currently in Portugal, in my view, whilst drafting a media code, the key to bridge the word that I said earlier, trust with fake news. And I'll explain now. All of this is to say what I'm about to say now. I start feeling that it is impossible to fight against fake news and disinformation in the sense of erasing it. The only way to do it would be to have censorship, and that in itself would be a very strong loss of freedom and of democracy. Therefore, if I have, as a policymaker, designer, let's put it this way, I have to accept the error of having fake news and disinformation. The other best option available is to put my chips on trust. And if I put my chips on trust, I have to make that accreditation, that credential I spoke earlier, as strong as I can. How can I do that? By betting on responsibility. More clearly, what is being thinking, what the Portuguese government is allowing me to do while drafting the media code is to consider the possibility of, mind you that what I'm saying here does not in any way a position of the Portuguese government. I'm working with the government as an academic, and I have freedom of creation, but the political decision will be later when they see the draft. So that in any way, I'm talking on behalf of the Portuguese government. But I am doing this. I am doing the media code. So the idea is, if I want to protect as much as I can the freedom of the press, and at the same time avoid fake news, the best option available in a liberal democracy would be to highlight the role of the journalism, of professional journalism, but that also means that the rigorous work of the rigorous news, actually the word is that in Portuguese, rigor informativo, information rigor, will have to be protected. That is to say, instead of fighting the evil, protect the good, protect the rigorous of information. Also, by making it very clear that if a professional journalism fails to do this and gives in to the temptation of fake news or disinformation, there will be responsibility. So I'm not talking about an option for every single content creator. I'm talking about giving accreditation to professional journalism in such a way that if any of us has doubts about something being true or not, we will fact check with proper media. Every media is proper. It was the wrong term. I'm so sorry. Disregard my last comment. Traditional media that follow deontological rules about publishing. That and protecting protecting in a very strong way, protecting traditional media is, in my view, the best way to fight disinformation by, and now this will link to that digital subscription that I talked to you about for kids between 15 and 18, by allowing them, after seeing TikTok or seeing Reels, X, and so on and so forth, when they are in doubt if something is true or not, to have free access, free for them, but paid for the professionals who work and have costs in producing verified content. So it has to be paid. Nothing is free. Hello? I'm still here? Okay. For a moment, I'm sorry. Am I out of time, right? I will stop. Let me just say this. So having the possibility to access accredited sources of information is, from a policy designer point of view, the best way to protect truth. I'm sorry, I went probably out of time. That's it.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Miguel. I will now, if one wants to do some questions, you can do writing in the chat. If you prefer, you can do it verbally. So I will give you the space. If not, I have some questions too. Okay,
I would like
maybe
to
not.
put a
Okay.
question to both professors, and first of all, thank you for the very educative interventions. My point is that I see that media literacy and education and all the guidelines from the European Commission, government efforts at national levels, we are talking in things that mostly will produce good results in the long run. However, it looks like the polarization in our societies coming from disinformation and all these reality about fake news are growing very fast in the short run. And how can we prevent this to happen in a scenario that we are mostly tackling problems for the long run? And this I would like to hear from your both of you. Thank you.
Vitor, do you want to jump in or should I?
Okay, Miguel, after you. Go ahead.
You can't. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. My phone rang. Meanwhile, in my opinion, you can't. You have to live with it. That's why I strongly believe, up to this point, that alongside with all the media literacy initiatives that Vitor just spoke to us, and should be, again, in my humble opinion, adopted by the policymakers, by governments, as part of the curricula of middle school and high school, at least. But alongside that, you should rather protect truthful news more than trying to fight something that will, in some way, condition the exercise of freedom of expression and freedom of the press. Vitor.
Thank you, Miguel. Yes, of course, I agree with Miguel, and the idea is, if you are tackling disinformation through education, it takes time. That's all. That's not possible because when we are investing in media information literacy, media literacy, digital literacy, it depends, of course, because there is a lot of different designations and definitions. It means that you are trying to improve or empower people, empower citizens that are able to uh, decide the information they can trust, the sources, the information sources they can trust. And this means that you need time and patience because there's no driver's license on media literacy, okay? You start learning media literacy when from cradle until the end of our lives. So it's not possible to have the driver's license. So this is one problem. It's possible. That's why I think we need, and it's not my idea, of course, it's a general idea that most people agree. We need a multi-stakeholder approach, and this multi-stakeholder approach implies, of course, regulation, legislation, implies fact-checking, and as Miguel said, and I fully agree with Professor Miguel, not only fact checking done by fact checkers, but fact check that are tools available for the general public that can use these tools to verify information. It's not to verify disinformation. I can only verify information. I cannot verify disinformation because disinformation is the result of a process. Okay, I can verify information, so everyone should be able to. So. You are right, Jose. You are perfectly right because we are looking for solutions on the long term, but it's difficult to solve it on the short term. The short term, the solution will be censorship. And this is not a solution. Or if you don't want to call it censorship, you can call it the Ministry of Truth. And we don't need the Ministry of Truth. We need the Ministry of Trust, and each one should have a bit of this Ministry of Trust. And all the population together makes the full Ministry of Trust. Yeah.
Thank you so much. We have a question in the chat from Arya Ashkari. I'm going to read it, but Arya, if you want, you can jump in and do your question. I really appreciate the Portuguese initiative for offering new subscriptions. I think that's a crucial point. It also makes me wonder, are we doing enough to equip young people with intertextual knowledge, the frames of reference they need to recognize recycled tropes, cultural reference, and narrative patterns that disinformation often draws on? I think it's to the both uh, of the speakers.
Go ahead, Miguel. Okay, it's okay.
Okay, thank you. I was giving the floor to you first, but thank you so much, Vitar. You're obviously right, Arya. We always need that, but in my view, that is something more to what Vitar said than what I did. Meaning, if people have the resources to recognize truth or to have access to truth, then you need media literacy, what Vitar said, to create your own habits, that is to say, of intertextual knowledge that comes from media literacy, to then, when in doubt, confront with accredited sources. To give you a basic example, in the middle of a public argument in social media, some news from 10 years ago is recycled to make a bombastic affirmation. If we have, again, as Vitar said, patience enough to have people with media literacy, with intertextual knowledge, they will recognize that there is something that smells bad, let's put it this way. There's something rotten in the kingdom of Denmark. Quoting Shakespeare, nothing against Denmark, quite the opposite. But then they need the second part, which is, if I feel something is off, where do I go to check it? Not only fact checkers, but also the possibility of quite easily have access to an accredited source of information. Vitar.
I also agree. I think we have a problem. It happens when we send the space shuttle to the moon. Sometimes we have a problem, and we have a problem here. The problem is, are we doing or have we an educational system that has quality enough to train children and young people on to have this intertextual knowledge? And this is only a question, but it's a question that I think we should ask first, because media literacy, it's not about learning to read, write, and counting. This is the specific initial literacy. Like AI literacy is not only computing. We need empathy. We need critical thinking. We need a set of competencies that are really, really key. And so, for instance, can you imagine if I use, or if I am only able to use 500 words of a language, how can I have critical thinking or intertextual knowledge? And this is a huge problem that we have to ask. It's a more broader problem, I think, okay, that we cannot solve with media literacy. And the other part of the problem is, as I said in the very beginning, uh, we are now a video society more and more. And so, of course, we must be able to read video, images, cartoons, text, everything. But maybe it's different reading in the terms of analyzing critically video and text. Okay. Um, this is a profound. Thank you for your question. Maybe your question is for sure better than my answer, but it raises a problem here, in my humble opinion. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Vitor. Can I go just a little bit
Of course,
further?
of course.
Because you tickled me with critical theory, which I was trying to avoid at all costs. But here it goes. There's a problem on what I'm about to say, but here it goes. From what I've seen in the past decade, let's put it this way, humor may play a critical role in this particular type of media literacy, which is developing critical thinking to feel when something's off. And I'll explain myself. Good humor is hard to come by, and you need a lot of intertextual knowledge to get it. And if you don't get it in a group of people who get it, you'll be dumb. And that may be actually something interesting, especially in the video culture, to make large parts of the society more prone on getting more critical thinking. Some of you know the series Yes Minister, or even better in some way, Allo Allo. But particularly Yes Minister, which I strongly recommend. It's Monty Python #2 for me. But to be able to understand some of the things, you have to have a general culture beforehand. For my kid who's 15, when he gets hurt, I, as fathers do, even though he's already 15, say, "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" And he answers me, "'Tis but a scratch," like this in the original English, "'Tis but a scratch," which is a response by the Dark Knight in a sketch by Monty Python. But he only is able to reply with humor, making fun of the situation, because he has that knowledge that allows him now to be funny. In the video world, where being funny is more than half of the goal, I strongly believe that professional creators of humor may be a very interesting tool for media literacy. That's it. Sorry for being so long.
Thank you. I know someone asked if someone wants to other questions? If not, I have here two questions. In the
We are not
You are
hearing
muted.
you. You are muted.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, I'm not muted. No, I have a sentence in the chat, but I don't know if this is a question. You have a shared experience. I don't think this is a question, but if it is, I ask the person to rephrase the question. So if you allow me, I have two questions. Um, Professor Victor, in our last talk, you say something for me that made me think, okay, about formal, non-formal, and informal education. Okay, so my question is how these three kinds of educations can complement each other and to work in this field of media literacy. This question is to Vitor Tomé and also to Professor Miguel. And the other question is looking ahead, what recommendations you will give to policymakers who want to strengthen the education ways to work the media literacy? If you want.
Okay, I can start if you don't mind, Miguel. Okay. First question. There's an old saying that is, it takes a village to raise a child. And in media literacy, this is absolutely true. So it means that usually media literacy projects should be context-based. Okay, if there's no one size fits all in media literacy. If I want to implement a community project in Lisbon, maybe it doesn't work in Castelo Branco or in Bragança or in Finland or in Burkina Faso. Okay, so it's context based. And at the same time, it's not something that we can do at school, like in general education. It's important to work together with family, with all the community, all the stakeholders have award to should have award. Okay, for instance, when we tried at the Council of Europe to implement projects starting from schools in 2019 2020, we asked the schools to sign a sheet of paper explaining who are the teachers, who is representing the board of the school, who is representing the students, the parents, the non-teaching staff, and who is part of this project from the community, because this is responsible. Okay, this is creating responsibilities. I think it's really important. So all the formal, non-formal, and informal education are part of media literacy and should be part of education and the hidden curriculum. Okay. In terms of recommendations, it's a very good question. Actually, I'm coordinating the subgroup that is producing the final or the almost final new chapter of the guidelines for on disinformation that are being produced by the European Commission. And this chapter is recommendations for policymakers. I'm really working on it right now. I'm
I
really working
didn't
on
know.
it. But I would say that for policymakers in general, it's important to hear real the voices from the field, because usually when only decide top level, this is not enough, and they should have in mind that there's no one size fits all, and the problem of media literacy to be solved needs money, but it is not possible to solve the lack of media literacy only with money. This is not possible at all.
I fully agree with Victor, obviously, and personally, being a liberal in the social liberal side of the pond, so following John Rawls, I strongly believe that you should have a fair opportunity, a fair shot. Therefore, having, from a policy design point of view, the aim is to allow for people to be able to access the same tools but how people access those tools, that should differ according to context. But it's something that either you go very local, so subsidiarity, which is very dear for the European Union, has to be a growing trend, for instance, in part of the curricula, at least with schools, and not so much a centralized design, policy design on curricula, or you have to find other ways. For instance, as currently with media literacy initiatives being sometimes local, but parallel to centralized systems. One tiny detail on what De Abreu B commented, completely in the chat. I completely agree. The Monty Python example and the fact-checking not providing this kind of shared experiences, so in some way limiting context. That's precisely why I said throughout 3 different things. Fact checkers are important, obviously, and I strongly recommend having fact checking, but access to proper traditional news, not necessarily fact checking, but having the critical capabilities, critical thinking to make your own fact checking process by accessing traditional media is important. And third, which is still in the domain of, we call it, I call it at least, naval engineering, which is, nasal engineering, which is, I smell like, cheira-me que. So it's a guesstimate. I strongly think that humor, and does the reference, not only fact-checking, but humor may be a very interesting way of developing critical thinking and shared context. Because to understand some sort of humor, you have to be, you have to share that intertextual contents and knowledge and so on. So I think it would be a combination of both in the future. But thank you so much for your comment.
So thank you, Professor Vitor Tomé and Professor Miguel Ferreira Silva. We are almost in the end. Thank you all for joining us today. My colleague Vera will put brief questionnaire in the chat that we will ask you to, if you don't mind, to answer. Will last at most 5 minutes, at most, to answer these questions. We hope that this webinar was offered valuable insights into how education can play a key role in tackling disinformation and promote media literacy. A special thank to our speakers, Professor Vitor Tomé and Professor Miguel Ferreira da Silva, for sharing their expertise with us. This webinar was part of the MILES project, Media and Information Literacy and Pre-Booking Approaches in Education, co-founded by the Erasmus Plus program. I will ask OLAE if you want to say something now in the end. If José, to say
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Janina. First of all, I must say that it's a pleasure to develop this project with a partner like Aproximar, and that I think we are doing our best in order to give a contribution. It's a very challenging topic because, and when we are talking about humor, I believe that for humor, we need to have references. And of course, people from older generations or from more educated ones are most probably the best place, the best to have these kind of references that make Monty Python a hit, and Ricardo Araújo Pereira, for instance, here in Portugal, and other references. But with the younger generation, what it looks that works very well is things that last for less than 6 or 7 seconds, and just go to the basics, and maybe for the most basic human feelings. And this has been explored by the far right wing and by the disinformation factories and fake news factories that are producing a lot for platforms that are now the success of the times that are going, we are passing. And this is we have TikTok, for instance, now maybe as the biggest platform. And for TikTok, I'm sure Monty Python would struggle to have the success they had, or Ricardo Araújo Pereira would not be the best one. But please feel free to comment on this. Just a last comment, and anyway, it was a big pleasure to have you, both of you, here, and it's I think your communications were very much important, and I hope today we had only 24 persons online, but I hope some others maybe will see this recording from this session in the future, because what you did, it's also your communications are also an asset for the future. So thank you very much, and please feel free to comment about the humor.
We'll arrive at the end. Not only 25 persons. For me, it was amazing to see all these people join in Monday morning to listen to us and talk about this important topic. So, thank you all. We invite you to follow the next steps of this initiative and stay tuned. And wishing you all a great day, and we hope to see you again very soon. Thank you. Obrigada in Portuguese. Thank you.
Thank you all.